Welcome to the second part of the camera animations tutorial. This time we will have a closer look and we will use a real-world example. We will use a model of a 3D car and we will do a few camera animations around it so that you can see how we will apply the things we learned in the first session in a more like hands-on example. So if you have missed the first one or haven't had a chance to view it, make sure to check that out if you want to learn how to do camera animations. We will cover all the basics over there, and this time, as I said, it's a little bit more hands-on. Also, after recording this, I noticed that the mouse clicks are kind of annoying, so please excuse me for that. I'll try to find a way to get rid of the very loud mouse clicks in the next video. Okay, but for now, have fun with this, and if you have any questions, make sure to comment below, and I'm really happy for every subscription to the channel. Okay, so I loaded up a scene with a car. As you can see, it's not fully textured, but for doing this kind of animation thing, that should be sufficient. Okay, let's say we want to do a sequence of different camera animations. So the first one should be, let's say we want to move the camera from the top to the bottom here along the grill. Then the next animation should be like focused on the light of the car, and I actually moved the car here a little bit. There we go. It still looks a bit too high for me, so let's lower that. Okay, there we go. So as I said, the next thing we want to do is want to have a rotation on that front light, and then the last animation could be like another pan along that dropping line here of the car, just like maybe a little bit of zoom in right here. Okay, so let's do that. So we have the first camera that will be our let's call it grill. That's the grill camera, and we have a total of 240 frames here again. That's good. And we will start right here. So I select the keyframe or the key or the frame, and then I hit the keyframe button. Now we have this key. And then let's move to, let's say, frame 90. So we have about 3 seconds of animation going, and we just stop right when the star is at the center. Okay, so that's our first animation. Let's do a quick playback. Okay, that's good. And then we will do our next animation. We add a new camera. And now the next thing we want to have is we want to add a target right here at the front light. So for that, I just use a new null object, and we call that front light. And let me get out of that camera here, and we will just roughly position that. Let me switch to the 2D view actually to make it a little bit more easy, and we will move it to that point, maybe a little bit more to the inside. Okay, so we go to the camera, we rename that to front light. Always make sure you name your objects just to make it a little bit more easy to find your way around. Okay, we will add the target object, and then again we need the spline. Change the plane of the spline, move that up a little bit, and we stay here. And so maybe like that, maybe we can increase the radius a little bit. We will see, we have to test, we will see. So align to spline, add the circle spline, and we go to the target object and we add the front light as a target. Okay, let's see if we move the position. Yeah, so I think what we can do is we can either lower the front light a little bit, but we should also increase the height of our path of our spline. You can see right here in this view. Okay, I just want to zoom in with the camera a little bit more. Why don't you do that? Okay, do it here. So we want to increase the focal length a little bit. So let's say we go to a normal lens, and let's go back to the align to spline tag and see. Yeah, that looks good for me. So we want to start maybe here at keyframe 90, we say 25%, and then we want to have a slow rotation, so we go to frame 160 and we just move it by a tiny bit. Let's say we go to 40% here. Okay, let's do a playback. Yeah, so we still have that ease in, ease out in, as you could see probably. We start slow again and then it accelerates a bit. So we will take care of that in a minute. For now, just finish that with our last camera, and this camera will be, just keep here kind of the order in here. We call that dropping line. Okay, so we go in that camera, we zoom in a little bit on that dropping line, and let's say where we ended 160, from here we want to add the keyframe, and we actually want to move the camera a little bit, so we move a little bit closer and a little bit to the side, maybe like that. So I go to 240, move the camera, rotate it a little bit, and hit the keyframe again. But what we also want to do, let's say we also want to increase the focal length a little bit. So we hit that 50 right here at keyframe 160. And then at the end, let's say we want to actually zoom in here. I don't know how that looks, will turn out. Actually, I did the wrong thing here. I have to increase, of course, the focal length a little bit. Let's say we go to 75. Okay, let's get rid of that ease in and ease out things. So we're gonna open up the window timeline dope sheet. And as you can see, we have not all the animations in here. So what we're missing is the front light align to spline thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to view, and then we go to automatic mode, and that will just give us all the things we're gonna need. Okay, so the align to spline thing, and let's switch to the F-curve setting. We go and hit linear, and we go to the krill. Where is it? It's there. So let me just select that, go to linear. It's actually easier this way. And the front light, we have dealt with that already. Dropping line also linear. And let's check back here. We go to the krill first. Nice linear motion. Then we go to the pan around that. It's actually a bit fast for my taste, so let's adjust that a little bit. Let's go to the front light spline thing, and let's use the advanced settings here, the advanced timeline editor. So we have the front light, the align to spline. So let's click here on that right part and move that, let's say, to 190 maybe, and then we will go with dropping a line a little bit faster in the end. Okay, let's see how that looks. Yep, that's better, a little bit slower. And now the last is the dropping line. Let's see if that may be a bit too fast now. Yeah, it is. So let's increase the frame range here a little bit, and we will go with this last frame to keyframe 300. And yep. That's good. So let's check that again. Okay, there we go. Now what we need now is we need the stage object. So we want to cut between those cameras. So stage, go back to frame 0. The first camera we have is the krill camera. Hit the record button. Then we go to frame 90. And at frame 90 we switch to the front light. Hit the record button. Then we have all the way up to frame 190. And then we switch to the dropping line. Hit the record button again. And now let's see how that looks. Let's see again. Not sure if the last cut was right on point. No, it's okay. So that's how you do different cuts with different cameras in Cinema 4D. Okay, perfect. Now let's say we want to render that out. What we will not do now is render full rendered animation with all the lights set up, etc. But what we want to do is we want to do a preview, a previz visualization of that kind of thing. So before you hit the render button on your fully lighted, fully textures 4K render image, you actually want to do a previz rendering. So to make sure that the speed is right, that the camera angles are right, and you just don't want to spend days, weeks of rendering just to find out later on that something is wrong in your setup. So what we're going to do for that is we use the hardware OpenGL render engine inside of Cinema 4D. This will just put out everything we see here. So what we can do actually to make it look a little bit more fancy is we can enhance and activate enhanced OpenGL. So that's the same thing you're going to have in here. So let's say we add the what's called a screen space ambient occlusion. So that will add a little bit of shadow into your scene. We can also add real shadow, but because we don't have any light source in here, that will not make that much of a difference. So what we want to do is we want to render the reflections. We want to render also the screen space ambient occlusion. And that's it basically for the setup. Just make sure we have the frame range set up here correctly. So we want to render all frames, which is from frame 0 to 300. That's fine. And let's put this somewhere on my desktop here, and we will create a new folder, and we will call that new folder car animation. And then we hit create. We give that thing a name. We can also call it car animation, and then Cinema will do some numbering on that frames. Okay, so that's just a preview animation, so we can just actually go with JPEGs, so we don't have that big of a file size for that, and then we can hit the render button. So as you can see, this renders pretty quickly now. That's what we want to do. Have a quick preview rendering of that. Okay, that's it. That was pretty fast. Now what you can do is we can go to post, and all the frames we just have rendered, put that into post-production software. But because it's just a previous rendering, we can also select the MP4 here and go to animation on the type thing. And that way, that's the quickest way to actually get our car animation preview or rendering out. Okay, so I'm in the car animation folder. That's fine. Save that. Now it will save all the frames into a nice and neat animation for us. So let me go to the car animation and open that up. And let's go. There we go. And let's hit play. And that's how our nice car pack shot animation looks like now. Okay, here's a little bonus tip. Let's say we also want to render a little bit of depth of field in our scene. Now, we can previz that actually also with the hardware OpenGL thing, and that's called depth of field. Now you see everything is a little bit out of focus here, so we have to make sure that our focus distance is actually set to something which is more in focus. We can deactivate the stage object for now, because if you don't, it will just snap right back into that camera. That's because the stage object is handling this. So we deactivate the stage object for now, go out, and then we want to make sure that each camera has about the right focal distance thing. You can also check in the physical tab over here and see what the f-stop of that particular camera is. So that's at 8 right now. We can also increase that to, let's say, 16, so that we don't have that much of blur inside of an image. So if I decrease that to, let's say, 2, you see everything in the back blurs out pretty much. And if I increase that to, let's say, 11, then we have a clear, sharp background. So this also is something, if you want to figure out how that works, I just advise you look up how camera photography thing works. This is exactly replicated in here. So also for the front light, let's check that. We want to be in focus here. So let's go to 200 and then we're in focus here. Let's check the physical. We can decrease this also a little bit so that we have a bit more of blur in the background. And where this will be maybe most pronounced will be on the top, and let's say on the grill camera. And let's say we want to do a transition. We want to have the focus on the front windshield, and then when it moves down, we want to focus on this star here in the front of this Mercedes. So what we're going to do is we want to figure out what's the first focal length. So right now the focal length is right at the back here. So let's decrease that to, let's say, 200. That's a bit too less, so we increase that a little bit more to about here, so that we will have the focus in here. And then at the end, at frame 90, we want to have like a clear focus on the star on the front. So we will animate that focal distance actually. So we start at frame 0 with a focal distance of about 400. Hit the record button, go down to this frame, and now we just adjust that down. Perfect, 200. This seems pretty sharp now. So hit that button again, and then we will have that nice switch of the focal distance inside that camera. Let's switch to the stage object again to see everything in motion. You see sometimes maybe the preview rendering here will slow down a little bit. It will be a little bit laggy, but if you render that out in the picture view, then everything will be smooth and fine. Okay, here's another trick. Let's say we want to do something more which has more the feeling like of a handheld camera or a steady cam, not like this smooth camera animation we just did before. So we add a new camera here, and what I do now is I just have this at this position, and I add what is called a motion camera tag. Now you see this puts this guy over here. So what we're going to do is we want to because we can't actually move that as long as the motion camera tag is on it, we can just put that in a group, and now we can move the group. So as you can see, it's a bit on the top there. You have that funny looking guy. I just move that to this position over here. Now I can go to the motion camera tag, I go to the rig, and actually let's go inside the camera. What you can do is you can do now this kind of head rotation in here inside of that settings. That's fine. I can move it a little bit more to the right, to the left, whatever. But the interesting thing here is if you go to motion, we can actually say that we want to have a bit of camera motion. And as you can see, this is now as if this green guy is holding the camera, so it's actually moving a little bit. It's not complete stable. So this is nice if you want to simulate this kind of handheld steady camera effect. So let's say go to steady cam, you can see that's a little bit more slow, a little bit more steady. Or I can go to ego, which is I think like the most kind of wild thing. Oh no, it's actually a bit not that wide. Let's see what do you got with ego. You see, as long as when I switch that during as the timeline goes, that messes up a little bit, but you see the dogma cam, that's quite wild. Yeah, so that's just a super easy quick tip that if you want to do this kind of more natural move to your camera animation, you can try to do it with the motion camera tag to get that kind of random motion in it. Okay, that's it for today. I hope that was helpful for you, and yeah, see you next time.